Hi, everybody. It's Robyn Jackson here. And this week I did a podcast on the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why I did that podcast episode. It's already generating a lot of comments. And the title of the episode was What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And for those of you who are watching the replay, make sure you put comments down below and let me know that you're watching the replay. And for those of you who are watching live, go ahead and put your comments down live and I'll try to respond to them while I'm talking. So this Wednesday, I did a podcast called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And although that title is a little provocative, it is a piece of wisdom that people have been giving me for years, which is that the thing that got you to the place where you are right now may be the very thing that's undermining your success in your current position. I'll give you 3 examples. One is a principal that I worked with a couple of years ago, and he was a brand new principal, and he was working really hard. He was getting to work early. He was the first person in his building. He was the last person to leave his building. Sometimes he'd be there 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. He was there on weekends. He was working really hard. And after working with him for a while, I told him, I think you're working too hard. And he says, what are you talking about? This is the gig. As the new principal, this is what I'm expected to do. And what I soon realized, and what I was trying to convey to him, was that he was approaching the principalship with the same toolkit that had made him such an effective assistant principal. So essentially, he was doing the assistant principal's job and trying to do the principal's job at the same time. The things that made him a good assistant principal were not the same things that were going to make him a great principal. In fact, the things that made him a good assistant principal were the very things that were holding him back from being an effective principal. I saw this the same thing even in my own career. When I moved from being a teacher to being an instructional coach, I came and approached that new role with the things that made me a good teacher. I took all of the tools that had worked in my classroom and I tried to share it with other teachers. I tried to approach other teachers with the same strategies that I use when working with my students. And the problem is, what made me a good teacher was not what was required to make me a good instructional coach. And I see this with schools themselves. I was working with a school just last week, and they had already experienced a little bit of success in their school. So they had done some things that had gotten them to a point where they were kind of out of threat of state takeover, but they still weren't performing at the level where they needed to perform. And the teachers were starting to get really tired and overwhelmed and frustrated because even though they were working really hard, the school wasn't moving. And when I sat down and worked with the school for a little bit, I realized that the strategies that had gotten them to this point had maxed out. Those same strategies were not what it was going to take to get them to the next level. And we always say this at Mindsteps. One of my mentors used to say this to me all the time: new level, new devil. So what got you here is not what it's going to take to get you there. And I see a lot of schools really struggling because they're working really hard, but they're using the same strategies that made them successful in the past without realize made you successful in the past. If you continue to use those same strategies, those strategies got you to where you were, but they weren't designed to get you to the next level. Every time you're trying to go to a new level, you have a new set of devils that you have to face. And so the thing that got you here is not the thing that will get you there. So at Builders Lab, which is an intensive that we offer 4 times a year, where we work with a small group of school administrators and instructional coaches to show them how to get their schools unstuck. What we often see is that the people who come to Builders Lab don't come to Builders Lab because they have a bad school. They don't come to Builders Lab because they have a struggling school. They come to Builders Lab because they have a mediocre school, or they have a decent school, or they have a good school. And they're stuck because they're working really hard. They're doing everything they know to do, but they can't get past this level here. They can't get to where they really want to take their schools. And they're wondering why they're stuck. And the number one reason that I see that schools get stuck is because what got you here won't get you there. You need a new technique, a new strategy. You need a new approach. The things that you were using in the past were great. They got you to this point, but they're not designed to get you to that next level. And if you want to get to the next level, you need a new set of strategies. I'll give you an example. I was working with this school a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that they were doing is that they were really doubling down on having teachers meet in PLCs and plan together. And they were having the teachers really focus on trying to create common assessments and plan together around those common assessments. The problem was only focused on common assessments. They weren't thinking through the standards. They weren't helping teachers think through the standards. And so the teachers were getting together and they were creating these common assessments. But the problem was the teachers were creating common assessments without a really good understanding of the standards. And the teachers were giving these common assessments and they were seeing that the scores were starting to plateau. So yeah, everybody had common assessments, but everybody was giving like these assessments that weren't really tied to the standards. So they were wondering what was going on, and maybe we need to double down on these common assessments, or maybe we need to have the coach work with them to develop better common assessments. Here's the problem. They were using common assessments, and that had gotten them kind of out of, this quagmire they were in before, and it had given them a little lift, tiny little lift, but a lift in test scores. And once they hit that plateau, they just thought, we'll just double down on this same strategy, without realizing that the strategy had taken them as far as they were going to be able to go. In order to get to the next level, you have to do something different. You have to look at your problem in a different way. What got you here won't get you there. So we sat down with them and we looked at the common assessments they were building, and we realized that the problem with those common assessments was that they weren't tied to the standards. So we shifted the work to help to help the teachers interrogate the standards so that they could really understand the thinking processes that were kind of embedded in the standards. And when they did that, they realized that the assessments that they were creating were not helping students reach the standards. So now when they're working on common assessments, they are now tying them directly to the standards, and they're starting to see that lift. And instead of seeing, tiny little incremental gains, 5% more, 10% more kids improving, they're now seeing 30 and 40% improvement from one test to the next, because what got you here won't get you there. You have to try something new. And so if you're feeling stuck, if you are frustrated and overwhelmed right now, or your teachers are overwhelmed because they're working so hard and you're not seeing the kind of gains that you should be seeing based on how hard you're working. Maybe you see a teeny tiny little gain, but you're not seeing the big lift that would really kind of move your school forward. Part of the problem is that what got you here won't get you there. You need to re-examine what you're doing. You need to look at the things that you're doing that no longer serve you, and you need to shed them. What we do instead in education, unfortunately, is that we continue to do the things that got us to the point where we are, and we do them uncritically. We never examine them to see if they're still serving us. And then on top of that, we add a new strategy and another strategy and another strategy. And no wonder our teachers are overwhelmed, and no wonder they're overworked. You don't have to be overwhelmed to see success. That I call that the hustle fallacy, where people feel like if we're not ready to vomit and cry because we're working so hard, then our school can't be successful. That's not true. That only happens when you are piling on new strategies on top of strategies that served you once but no longer serve you. What got you here won't get you there. So go back, take a look at some of the things that you're continuing to do, and ask yourself, do those things still serve us? And if they don't, then you need to let them go so that you can make room to do the things that will get you to the next level. Remember, new level, new devil. And every time you get to another level, you have to think about, okay, what's the next big challenge that we have to face? So one of the things that we do at Builders Lab is we show you how to do that. We give you a system that shows you how to do that. We show you how to kind of look critically at what you're doing, figure out what still serves you, figure out what your biggest constraint is right now, and then we show you how to knock that constraint out in the next 90 days. So rather than making these tiny little gains throughout the year where you go 1%, 2%, 3%, maybe 5%, or maybe even 10%, we're helping people make dramatic gains, 30, 40, 50% improvement in as little as 90 days. So what I'm going to do is I'll put a link in the comments if you want to join us at the next Builders Lab. It's coming up on January 21st, 2020. We're going to have a small group for this January Builders Lab, and that's really good for you, because what that's going to mean is that you will have more one-on-one time with me, and you'll be able to work with my team a little bit more closely. And the idea is that you come to Builders Lab, and in 3 days, we work on knocking out your biggest constraint. So rather than continuing to just kind of beat your head against the wall and deal with the same problems over and over and over again, come to Builders Lab and we'll show you how to figure out what is your biggest constraint, what's your biggest barrier that's keeping you from those dramatic gains, and then we will knock it out and knock it out for good. I'll put the links in the comments, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them.